Welcome, Tangle friends. My name is Annie Reiser. I'm a certified Zentangle teacher and also a certified botanical illustrator. And I'd like to welcome you today to another of my Lunchtime Tangle series. We're going to be learning Cubine. Cubine is an original Zentangle pattern, and it's right here. This kind of cube-like pattern. This is how you can use it in different settings, and it is definitely one of my go-to tangles because it is so versatile and is such a lovely background to add different textures to when you want to be bold in your design. As you can see here, just how bold it is, because there's a lot of darks and a lot of lights, so we can get some cool effects with shading. I discovered something pretty exciting. I have these books. I have lots of design books and ornament books, but I have this one book that's called World of Ornament. Let me show you the World of Ornament, and it's 2 volumes, and it's rather big, a huge book. And I was thumbing through it recently, and I opened it up to this page, and I went, oh my God, there's Cubine right here. So this is just proof of the fact that, you know, Zentangle patterns are nothing really new under the sun. They have been around in nature, in architecture, in artwork from humanity since we've been around. So this one is definitely at least 1,000 years old, because this whole panel of designs here on this page are from the Middle Ages, between the 9th and the 13th century. And this panel here is showing the pattern that is on the floor in the porch of St. Mark's Basilica in Venice. And it is actually marble. And since it is in such a difficult material to maneuver, it is very geometric in its style. So there you have it. It was from they say in this book, the basilica itself was built between 976 and 1094. Today I wanted to match up that beautiful pattern. I wanted to emulate the colors. I made this up on a tiny 3Z tile that I think is really pretty, and made it in those same colors as the basilica floor. So that's what we're going to work on today, and we will start out with a 3Z Zentangle tile. I'm going to get a little closer. This is from Zentangle.com. It's if you don't have one of these tiles, it's not a big deal. You can make yourself an equilateral triangle of any size, and it will work. And I am going to do what we call a string, which is penciled in. We're going to basically do that pattern that we learned 2 weeks ago called well, and we're going to use that division in which we drive along the pattern, or drive along the inside shape. It was a circle in the demonstration that I did, and we're going to arc out and go into the corner to make kind of an aperture-like bow. And I'm going to turn my tile and do the exact same direction. So I'm starting out here, and I'm going to the counterclock direction. And that's going to be my basic division that we're going to be working from. So now I'm going to get my ink out, which is a 0. I'm going to be actually using the PN because I'm going to be filling in a lot of black sections that require kind of a more robust nib. And the PN is a plastic nib. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this out. And we're going to divide this section. This is going to be our Cubine, and we're just going to divide it in half as much. And if you want to use your pencil to get it kind of more equal, you can, in case you have to erase. But watch how I follow that curve. See how I had to correct that? You want to follow the curve. The Cubine is so great because it fits into any section, any string that you're putting it in, and I like to use the curves that are given. And so that's why I'm doing that there. This one could actually come a little bit closer in. So that it's exactly divided in half. Well, as exact as you can get when you're doing this freehand. And then our other sections, we'll just divide it out with the pen, and I'll show you. We're just going to make squares, an actual grid. So here we go, and I'm going to go ahead and ink this out. And now I'm going to start like at this corner of the triangle and make my first division for the grid down. Now our grid should be sort of, we should concentrate on making as much of a square as we can freehand. I can't go just here. I'm going to have to go a little further over to keep that square shape. There'll be one here and maybe even one there. So there's our initial grid. So I've already gone ahead and I've done the coloring on this and the shading, so I can show you exactly how I get to that result on this one section here. And so once again, I am going to take my pencil and I'm just going to divide this in half as much as I can, freehand, but retain that curve so that we get approximately equal widths at the top and the bottom. Ink that out. Make our grid with approximately square shapes. They're not going to be perfect because this is freehand. And draw a diagonal line. So you can get into the rhythm of it. And you notice how this is just fitting into the shape that I want it to fit into. So there's going to be some distortion there, but that's okay. That's kind of the beauty of it. If you take a look at this one that I did, this one is actually just a wavy line, right? And when I make my little corner squares, I have to emulate that same curve so that the squares are not distorted within the grid, if you can understand what I mean. You'll see if you start working with this pattern how you need to flex with this spaces that you choose to put it in. It's a little bit of a mind game. So these are pretty straight. So I'm just going to do parallel lines to make my corners. This is the Cubine cube. Because, whoops, that one's a little off. You do want to try to match up. You stop at the line and then match up there and go at a 90-degree angle from that line. I was talking and demonstrating, so it's a little hard for me. So there's the Cubine pattern, and regularly you would go in there and fill this entire corner square black. But we're going to use our colors to kind of help us with this three-dimensional look that this cube gets. So I'm going to just blacken in this bottom right side of this bottom triangle. So we've made our square into two triangles. So I'm going to go ahead and color this in. Okay, so that our next color is going to be, I'm going to use a red Sakura brush to color in the red bottom. So if you look at the pattern upright, the whole bottom is going to be dark red. So if you're looking at this, the dark red and the black seem darker than the gray and the yellow, and they are. So that's where we're getting that illusion of shading already before we actually even add our shading on there. We could just stop with the colors as they are, but then it's just a flat pattern like we saw in the book and not this lovely kind of rich looking three-dimensional shaded piece of art. And then I'm going to make my gray triangle with this brush pen also. This is a Copic marker. It's a C3, a cool gray Copic marker. You could also just use your graphite pencil. And I'm going to fill in that other half of the square in the upper right. My little mess down there should disappear in the scheme of things after I shade. No mistakes in Zentangle, we just deal with it, right? Okay, those will be yellow. So then on my yellow, I didn't just go on there with that orange or the yellow. I always color layer. This is part of my technique that I do on a lot of my botangles. So I'm going to start and I'm just going to build up that color. First by adding my yellow. I'm going to keep on progressively getting darker so that it makes for a much richer color. I see that I forgot a spot here. This should be red. So all of them are getting this base color of yellow. I'm using the Faber-Castell Polychromos color. It's a wonderful artist grade color pencil. And I'm going to go over the top. This one is Cadmium Light Yellow, and then I'm going to take the Cadmium Orange, I believe. Yes, Cadmium Orange, and then I'm just going to go over that again just to build my color. And then on top of that, I've got a little bit darker color, which is the light Cadmium Red. So these are all the cadmiums. They're kind of the warm tones. And where we want to shade on here is going to be up here at the top. And if you only have a black graphite pencil, that's where you would be putting some of your shading. Do you see how this is already taking on this would provide like a little drop shadow here. And that's why we want that to be shaded. And I'm going to kind of blend it a little bit with my So in order to really blend a layered up colored pencil like this, you can use either a lighter color. I can go back on here and actually burnish and blend with my lighter yellow. You can use a colorless blender that is basically a pencil that has just no pigment in it, but it lets you push down in the tooth of the paper and really kind of burnish and blend and mix those colors. Basically, we're mixing the colors right on our tile. Or you can use something called a solvent blender. This one is from Prismacolor, and it has two sizes on its two sizes. The very tiny tip, and then there's the other side is a brush tip that's larger. Sometimes they're marker tips as well. But watch this. I'm going to just lightly pull that colored pencil that I laid down up there and bring it into the light. And you see how that becomes almost like a watercolor. This is how I do all of my blending. Either with one of those three ways, depending on what materials I'm using. So this really is basically mixing your colors right on the tile. But it has the same look as a watercolor, right? So now we need to shade the bottom here. If you take a look at this, we're going to shade here in the corner because it looks like our light is coming at this box from here, making it light on this side. So this side would be a little bit in shadow. So we're gonna do that over here. This side's gonna get some color that is Tuscan Red, and this one is a Prismacolor. I love this. It's a very Prismacolors are very buttery and layer up nicely on top of things, especially on this marker. You could have also used just a red pencil down here, but I like to experiment with how different materials work with each other and how they layer on top of each other. And this is working really well. So I like to kind of do an eyelash stroke because you're putting more pressure where you want it darkest, and then you're pulling it towards yourself and lightening up your stroke and your pressure, and that will make for an automatic gradient. You can always go back on and build more and more, but you see how it's sort of it's sort of rough, so we want to blend that out. And one thing about using these blenders is you want to always have a piece of paper nearby to clean up your tip in between so that you don't contaminate the colors. If I went right on that yellow now with this tip, it would add some red. So you do need to beware of that. So one thing I did do, I did another one of these, and I did go back in with my graphite pencil. I don't really particularly like to put graphite on top of colored pencil, but I think it kind of works here because what we've got going on is almost like a fold. Here here and here like a seam, and I want it to look like that's overlapping. So this one is on top of this one, so I'm going to give it some shadow here so it looks like that seam is resting right on top of that other piece. And I'm going to accentuate or restate this line. And then I'm going to give it some more shading over here. Same thing, because I just want that to look like we could just pick it up and unfold it. Sort of like one of those tri-cornered coin purses. So that one I already shaded, but that's definitely giving it that illusion that you can just like pinch this together and it will fold open. Now for the center, I'm going to treat this like a faceted jewel sort of, and in order to do that, I'm just going to divide my triangle like we do in that. I do this one pattern all the time that creates the stars when they're fragments next to each other. So that should actually go to the corner. And now I am going to paint it, also using the paint as kind of a self-shading tool. If you look at this one here, this is what I did. I have darker, medium, and lighter, and that gives us the illusion of this just popping up at us in three-dimensional form. So I'm going to go ahead and show you what I like to use for that paint. Is we have a really great coverage, and they actually sort of look like real gilding. So I like to use these in many different situations. So I'm going to go for the darkest first, which is here. Really want to get my paint nice and thick so that it has good coverage. You could probably use a smaller paintbrush. This one is rather large. This is a number 4. But it's a good brush with a pretty small tip. So there's the darkest one. Then I'm going to do, it's best if you just let this dry, but this is a demo, so I'm just going to go ahead and take the next lightest one, which would be here. And then we're going to go with a really light, almost white gold. I'm going to be using that with this one right here. Generally speaking, I would have let this dry first to get a really crisp delineation between those colors. But we're going to also help that along by adding a very fine 005 Micron Pen line to do just that. So I'm back again, and my gold triangle is now dry, and I'm going to go over top with my marker. I'm actually going to use my multi-liner. It's a Copic marker, and it's a 0.1. It's pretty fine, and you can get much finer even still, but I think this will work nicely. So So there we have it. That looks like a gem now, right? There's our final project, and I hope you have as much fun as I do using Cubine in all kinds of different situations. Here's another one. Bye for now. Well, that's it for today's Tangle. Thanks for joining me. If you like these lunchtime tutorials, please give them a thumbs up and subscribe to this YouTube channel. I also invite you to check out my website for classes that I've scheduled or to purchase my Tangle tags for your favorite step-outs. Our website is botangle.net. I'm also leaving you with some other links. Zentangle.com is where you can learn more about the Zentangle method from its founders, Rick Roberts and Maria Thomas, and you can also visit their store for a multitude of Zentangle paper tiles, tools, books, kits, subscribe to their newsletter, and get some other really valuable resources. TanglePatterns.com is that site I talk about where you can explore hundreds of Tangle patterns, read about them, and get the step out, which is basically the deconstruction of the pattern so that you can recreate it on your own. And finally, if you'd like to share your session results with me and my student community, please join Annie's Botangle Alumni Facebook page. This is a private group where we inspire each other with our work and offer tips and useful information about art and Zentangle.